Good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Lauren Jabbar here with Mark Zinno. Zinno, this is like the first Saturday show we've done together in a little while, and I'm so excited. How the heck are you today?
I know. I'm good. I'm recovering from Halloween has now become a sort of like week-long event when you have children. So last night was dressing up and trunk or treating, and I was a character that I had no idea who I was, but kids seemed to love it because my kids picked out my Halloween costume. It was some Fortnite character. I don't even know what it is, but kids seemed to recognize who I was. I'm like, okay, so at least that's working because I had no idea what I was for Halloween this year.
So did you dress up with your kids? Like, were you guys all dressed up together?
Yeah, I did. Here, I'll in the interest of the audience.
Yeah, let's see a photo. Picture, it didn't happen.
So I was the oh, there we go. I was the skeleton. Where am I? Why can't I figure this out?
Other way.
I was the skeleton guy in the middle, and then those were the two. They're all from Fortnite. So that was us yesterday, walking around, having fun. And, yeah, I don't know. I made a TikTok video of gambling TikTok video with the masks. So go to my TikTok at Mark Zinno and check it out. It's a 3-game parlay for today.
Quick plug on the Zinno TikTok. He's a TikTok star now, you guys. So make sure to check out Mark Zinno on TikTok.
I'm still struggling, okay?
We do what we can. We do what we can,
I'm like,
Zinno.
We do 30 minutes to make a 30-second TikTok video. So, you know, it doesn't go as headline.
Also, now I have like a laser beam shining in from the sunshine. Do you see that outside? We'll make it work. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, we have a lot to get into. Right? Where are you now?
I'm in Milwaukee. We had a game against the Pistons last night, so we were in Detroit last night. Hopped on a plane right after the game, flew up here to Milwaukee. Yeah, so now we're here. We have a game against the Bucks tonight, and that's what's going on. We got a laser beam. We'll make it happen. Hopefully, it's shooting through my knowledge in my brain right now because we got a lot to talk about today. Week 9, key games in college football. We have Cash Trash or Play, SEC edition, college football playoff preview with Michael Felder, and then we can't end the show without our Pickswise 3-star play of the day and our best bets of the day. So let's get right into it. Let's bet it. Key games. Let's start out with my favorite game this week, and it's actually going to be my best bet, so I'm not going to get into it too much right now. Ohio State taking on Penn State. OSU laying 14.5 points. That total right now set at about 60.5, 61, depending on what book you're looking at. This is the game of the week, to be honest with you. Number 2 versus number 13. Penn State hasn't won this matchup, Zinno, since 2016, but the last 5 games have been really close. Do you think that with the way Penn State's defense has been playing, or lack thereof playing, they can stay in this game against Ohio State, or is Ohio State just way too dominant and this is going to be a blowout?
I mean, Penn State has covered 5 of the last 6 meetings in this series, and this is the second largest favorite that Ohio State has been against Penn State when they were a top 15 team since the FBS-FCS split in 1978. So this is a significant number here. It bothers me a little bit for Penn State that this is like a sleepy noon kick for the Nittany Lions. Like, I can't believe they couldn't get a later kickoff of this. Like, you want those Penn State fans pounding vodka at like 10 o'clock in the morning for a 7 o'clock kick. You want them rowdy and hammered and over the top, and you want a raucous crowd. Like, they don't have time to get that loud and raucous for a noon kick here. Like, I know they had their whiteout game and everything, so I feel like that may play into some of this, that Ohio State may have a slight advantage because you won't get that sort of raucous day-long tailgating crowd in Happy Valley. But, Penn State for me, I can't get out of my head how much things fell apart for them against Michigan. Now, I know it was on the road, but remember, Penn State had a 17-16 lead in the third quarter of that
Yeah.
game. It gave up two 60-plus yard touchdown runs, and Michigan never looked back. It's like that defensive lapse can't happen against Ohio State if they want to cover this game. If they don't have that happen, I feel like they can stay within this number. But if I hadn't seen it happen against Michigan, that thought wouldn't be creeping in the back of my head. I lean Penn State here. This will be a no play for me. I lean Penn State because it is a 2-touchdown number. They should be able to stay within that number, and probably the back door may be open if Ohio State is up by 20 plus, in this game for them to score a late touchdown. So I'll lean with the Nittany Lions, but it'll probably be a no play for me.
Yeah, that their defense allowed 41 points and 418 rushing yards to the really only test that they've faced this season in terms of offense. So that worries me a little bit. I'll get into that for my play of the day. I want to touch on CJ Stroud for a second, though, and his Heisman odds, because right now you could get him at even odds. Zeno, do people pick that up right now? Plus 100 on FanDuel right now.
I mean, even odds for CJ Stroud. I have to go back to what I said in the summertime. Like when CJ Stroud was plus 350, I told the world, take him right now, because the minute he throws a pass this year, those odds are never going to be that good. At even money, I don't think it's a terrible bet. I really don't, just based off where the odds are, because he's been a heavy favorite all season long. I mean, obviously you see the numbers there. Hendon Hooker creeping up on him. Bryce Young still in the conversation. I'll still turn my attention to Caleb Williams as an outside shot, based off the fact that if USC runs the table and wins the Pac-12 as a one-loss team, gets to the college football playoff, they'll decide that by the time we end up figuring that out. But Caleb Williams would need a pretty significant run, and I think he's got it in him, because Lincoln Riley and that offense show no signs of slowing down. Even the game they lost to Utah, still scored 42. Caleb Williams still threw the ball all over the place. So if he can keep doing that, get a couple of more signature wins under his belt, win the Pac-12 title against a really, really, really good Oregon team, he may have a shot to creep in this thing, because I think what's going to happen is Hendon Hooker will fall back, Bryce Young will fall back, and C.J. Stroud would be the only real competition for Caleb Williams at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to fix my lighting for a second, Zeno. Is this better? Look at this. Is there no more laser beam?
You are glowing. You are glowing. There's no more.
The sun. I can't control it, you guys. It's like an hour earlier here. The thing is rising.
Give some credit to our production staff to jump in right there and be like, yeah, we're going to put up a screen here, go fix the window, and then come back in, and life will be perfect. And it is.
I absolutely – look at that. Look at it. It's like it's back like we never left, baby. Let's take it on over to TCU. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's take it on over to TCU, taking on WVU. TCU laying just over a touchdown at 7.5. That total is set under 70, 68.5. Really, really high total. But the Horned Frogs, they just keep finding a way. It was a battle with Kansas. The offense had a game against Oklahoma. I think they had like 668 total yards. They survived against OSU. They're 7-0. And rightly, they deserve to be. I don't know. They won in a bunch of different ways. But still, WVU, I feel like they could maybe take advantage. I don't know. Yeah. I honestly, this is a stay away game for me. But how do you feel about this one?
I'm with you. Dangerous spot here for the Horned Frogs. West Virginia has covered each of its last 6 games against TCU dating back to 2016, and they're 4-1 against the number against AP-ranked opponents since the start of last season. TCU is coming off a run, LJ, of 4 consecutive games against top 20 opponents, and they've won them all.
Yeah.
And they've covered – well, they haven't covered. Sorry, they've won them all. And like at some time, the exhaustion has to set in, and maybe TCU looks at this game and goes – finally, God, we could kind of relax a little bit against an opponent that we're just better than. 7.5 number. Morgantown is a wild place to play. I know it doesn't seem like it in years past, and West Virginia's been bad on the road, but this is a really sticky spot here for TCU. This might only be a field goal win for the Horned Frogs here, but like West Virginia today, taking more than a touchdown in points.
Yeah, I look at this one, and the one thing that worries me about West Virginia is the fact that TCU is number 3 in the country in yards and scoring on the
Yeah.
offensive side, and they're protecting the ball. And you look at a team like West Virginia, they've been kind of struggling on the defensive side. They allowed 600 yards to both Baylor and Texas Tech, and they're last in the Big 12 in scoring defense right now. So maybe TCU can take advantage. Maybe WV will buckle it up and get it going. This is a stay away game for me, but I'm excited to watch it. It's going to be a fun one. Yeah.
I would add one more thing here, real quick, LJ. 5 of the last 6 games for TCU have gone over the total. I would expect points to be scored. I think they can clear that 68. Both of these teams should get into the mid 30s.
Points, 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 points. You love to see it. I love those high scoring games. Speaking of, Oklahoma State versus Kansas State, I don't think is going to be as high scoring of a game. This game right now, KSU's laying 1.5. The total set at 55. Kansas State tried to bounce back after dropping last week to the aforementioned TCU, but they still control their own destiny at this point when it comes to playing for the Big 12 title, right? Deuce Vaughn powers their offense. I think he had 744 yards on the season, 4 touchdowns. Kid's a stud. OSU, though, only played 2 road games this season, and one being a loss to the aforementioned TCU. Kansas State has gone 8-3 against the spread in the last 11 games between the two, but I know KSU's is dealing with some injuries to starting quarterback Adrian Martinez. Can they still take advantage, or are you leading Oklahoma State in this spot?
I mean, you have to kind of lean with the Cowboys here. Mike Gundy has really been good in these spots. You know, in games where it's either plus 3.5 or minus 3.5 for Oklahoma State, they're 14-3 when the spread stays within that number. And even more impressive, since 2010, Mike Gundy, 13-2 away from home in spots like this. So with the injuries to K-State and Adrian Martinez, it's really tough for me to look at this as a game that I can back K-State. And I know that they're home and they're very good. They're probably underratedly good. But Oklahoma State 11-1 against the number in Big 12 play since the start of last season. The best such cover percentage in the Big 12 over that span.
Wow. Yeah, Oklahoma State, they have a great offense too. Spencer Sanders thrown for more than 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. He's also has legs. Like he's shown that he can move out of the pocket. He has 8 rushing touchdowns on the season right now. OSU has covered the spread in 8 straight road games, so that is something to keep in mind. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in this one. I'm excited for that game too. What else I'm excited for is Tennessee, because I still have that futures bet on Hendon Hooker to win the Heisman. I got it before the season started at 60-1. I am like a Tennessee fan now. Don't tell that to my Georgia friends next weekend when I'm going to be watching the game with them. But this could be a look-ahead spot for Tennessee against Kentucky.
Yes.
They need to focus on the task at hand. They know Georgia is right around the corner. This is also one of the most exciting games to me of the weekend. But they really need to stay focused. Will Levis, I know, is getting better, whatever that means for Kentucky. He returned from his foot injury, then played through a shoulder injury last week against Mississippi State. Hendon Hooker, though, he's been phenomenal. 18 touchdowns and only 1 interception in 7 games this season. Really good at escaping the pocket. I've loved what I've seen from him. I feel like this is going to be an extremely high-scoring game. The total's right now set at 61. When you see this total, do you lean the total or do you lean kind of a side in this spot?
Well, I mean, I have 2 3-star plays up on the website on Pickswise.com. This is one of them here, and I'm going to back the Wildcats. Kentucky comes into this game with the number 9 scoring defense in the country and riding a 3-0 ATS run against AP-ranked opponents this season. Now, you'd mentioned Hendon Hooker in the Heisman and your Heisman ticket, and it's a smart ticket to have. You're in great position. And while Hendon Hooker is getting Heisman consideration, Will Levis, the quarterback for Kentucky, he's getting number 1 overall draft pick consideration and the top quarterback coming off the board next in the NFL draft. If you look at what Tennessee's pass defense, and I've been telling everybody this for weeks, Tennessee is going to get got because of that pass defense at some point this year, which gives up over 330 yards per game through the air. When Anthony Richardson of Florida could throw for 457 and Jaden Daniels can throw for 300, what do you think Will Levis and a Kentucky offense that's top 10 in the nation in passing efficiency is going to do to this defense? On the flip side of that, the Wildcats are also very good on the defensive side of the ball. The only other SEC offense that comes close to matching Tennessee is Mississippi State, the air raid offense with Will Rogers and everything that they do. Well, Kentucky held them to 225 yards and 1 offensive touchdown. Now, they won't be that successful against Tennessee defensively, but they love to pace down. I know Tennessee is a great run defense, but Chris Rodriguez finally getting his legs back under him after missing the first 4 games of the year. They will still be able to have some success on the ground. Mark Stoops of Kentucky love to grind this pace down. So when you talk about how many points are going to be scored here, LJ, Kentucky likes to play that slower speed. However, I think Tennessee doesn't need a lot of time with the football to be able to score. So from that standpoint, I kind of agree with you. I lean on the over. Kentucky's goal in this game is to keep Tennessee into the low 30s, get them to 33. Even Florida only held Tennessee to 38 points. Why? Because Florida was a little bit more methodical in their scoring drive, so Tennessee couldn't score, in the 40s. But like I said, that 35, under that number, Kentucky should be in a great spot, have a shot to win the game. If Tennessee gets to 40, not only can Kentucky not win it, they might be in a problem not to cover, because I feel pretty confident Kentucky is going to get to like 24, 27. So if they keep them in that low 30 range, they should be okay. But, this, in order for Tennessee to cover this game, it's got to be like 40 to 24, 40 to 27 type range to be a final. I don't think Kentucky allows them to get to 40.
Well, good news also for Kentucky. They're coming off of a bye, right? Will Levis is probably going to be close to 100%. He has another week to rest. They're also getting Tavion Robinson back from his leg injury. Right tackle Jeremy Flax is back from a hamstring injury. They're adding a lot of big pieces back into their team after getting a little bit of rest, people coming back from injuries. The Doppler radar, made sure to check that out too. The weather's going to be great. And we already know that Tennessee can score. They scored 52 against Bama, 65 last weekend against Tennessee Martin. They can almost cover the spread on their own. Like you said, I don't think they're going to be scoring that many points, but the over is a really good lean here, in my opinion. Last but not least, one of the other big games in week 9, we got Cincy taking on UCF. This game is kind of a pick-em. UCF laying maybe a point and a half at some books. That total right now is at 56. Look, Cincy, though, looking to make it 7 wins in a row. They've had 6 wins since their week 1 loss to Arkansas. Like, no better way to bounce back after a bad week 1. But UCF, they did have a tough week last weekend against East Carolina. Solid before that. They won 4 straight games by 17 plus points. They're back at home this weekend, 11-1 in their last 12 games there. Do you think Cincinnati can take advantage at home, or does UCF sneak up? Or, yeah, do you think it's at UCF?
Yes.
Do you think UCF can take advantage at home, or Cincy can sneak in there on the road and get it done? Because UCF is 11-1 in their last 12 games on home turf.
They are, and they have one of the best defenses in the American. And that's really the issue, is how much can Cincinnati score against a UCF defense that's only allowed 120 points this year through 7 games of football. Do the math of what that is per game. So, this is going to be a really tough test for Cincinnati. I've had my fill of the American this year. I just have not really been on, including last night with East Carolina, and BYU. If you guys stayed up late to watch that game in Provo, Utah, God, BYU left it on the table so many times. ECU, in my opinion, got a little bit lucky getting out of there. But I would probably take the home dog here with the points, especially given that UCF is a defense.
Absolutely. And I know since he's coming off of a big but close win against SMU, they had 14 penalties last game, which kept SMU in it. Since he's won the last 3 games between these two teams, they also lead the nation in sacks per game and tackles per loss per game. They've also won 19 straight in conference play, but this could be a good spot at home for UCF. So we'll see what ends up happening for that. Let's get back to the SEC, because right now, that is the exciting conference to talk about. I want to cash, trash, or play some of these teams. For you right now, Georgia's at -110 to win the SEC. Alabama plus money, plus 140. Tennessee 6-1, and LSU 25-1. Zeno, if you could cash, trash, or play 3 of those 4 teams that I just mentioned, what does that look like for you?
Well, look, I'm going to cash Alabama. Like, I'm not going to fall into this trap again where I run because they lost to Tennessee. They went out last week and dominated over Mississippi State. They have 2 more road games coming up against LSU and Ole Miss. These are both winnable games for Bama, and I know those numbers are going to be short because the perception is that Bama falls off. I think this is a buy spot on Alabama going forward in the next 2 weeks. They're better than LSU. They should have no problem handling Ole Miss. Like, I know the demise of Alabama is fun to write about, but in reality, they have an easy run right to the SEC championship game again. And are you really going to doubt Alabama in a coin flip game, even against Georgia or Tennessee, a rematch with Tennessee if that's what happens? Are you really going to doubt Alabama to be able to go and win that game? I'm not. So I think you're getting value on Bama. It's a buy low spot on them when the number is their plus money to win the conference. I can't pass it up.
Mm-hmm. What about your trash? Who you trashing?
I'm going to trash Tennessee. I just
No.
Yes, that pass defense.
I don't allow it.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, I would defer to you because you're always right in these situations, which gets utterly annoying after working with you for over a year now. You tend to have a better.
I know. Jared had enough of me this week too, so it's okay.
The difference is I don't let you don't rub it in my face. So no, but you have a good beat on some of this stuff. So I just think that Tennessee, that pass defense is going to cost them a game where their offense isn't as sharp as everybody thinks it's going to be.
We'll see. I don't know. So I'm going to be honest with you. My play is Tennessee at 6-1. Maybe a lot of that has to do with my Hendon Hooker 60-1 play. The team is phenomenal. They upset Bama, and I know people are like, well, what about their defense? They didn't. Well, guess what? If you can outscore any teams, I know defense wins championships, but if you can score enough points to win games like that, that's all that matters, right? They couldn't stop them. The offense looked great. If this hits, heck yeah, big payday. They need to beat Georgia next weekend. They need to focus this week against Kentucky. I could see this being maybe a little bit of a look-ahead spot for them. But, that's okay. Georgia, I'm going to cash them. It's going to come down to Alabama and Georgia realistically in the SEC championship game. I think Georgia's going to make it 2 years in a row where they win. And I'm trashing LSU. There's no way that they win the SEC. So why do I even put money on 25-1 to be able to talk about LSU here? But my play, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Go Vols, baby. Tennessee Volunteers. I've never been a bigger Vols fan. Don't tell all of my friends.
You do know that Hendon Hooker can still win the Heisman without Tennessee, winning the SEC. It's still possible.
But he needs. I don't know. There's only been 2 guys ever that have won the Heisman with under a 10-win season, one of them being Tim Tebow. And also, I feel like he needs to go to the conference championship.
Season, right?
He needs to be able to go to the conference championship to be able to win the Heisman. He has to 100%, which means he needs to beat Georgia next week. He needs to beat Kentucky this week. It's going to be high pressure, high stakes scenario, but I really do think that maybe they'll be able to pull it off. I want to talk to Michael.
Their only loss could be to Georgia, and that's an 11-1 team. So you can get your 10 wins and still win the Heisman and not win the SEC. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, let's talk. Let's bring in Michael Felder to talk a little bit more about this. You can find him at In the Bleachers on Twitter. He's a college football analyst. Bring on in our boy Michael Felder. How do you feel about Tennessee, Michael?
Oh, I love them. I absolutely love them and in love with them. They are remarkable. I think they have an opportunity. And I heard you guys talking before I came talking about Kentucky being a look-ahead game. With as bad as Tennessee has been for 2 decades, I don't think they have the luxury of looking ahead to anything. Thing I'll say about Tennessee, with a lot of I've got a lot of friends that went to Tennessee, friends that are Tennessee fans. And the big thing for them is they are very much like North Carolina State fans. They're very much like Michigan State fans. They're waiting for the bottom to fall out. They're waiting to go like, oh, this is all fool's gold. Everything went bad. We actually aren't that good. This is bad. And so for them, I think that both the fan base and the actual football team, especially with Heupel being a guy that's completely from outside of the environment, he understands we got to win these football games. I don't think Kentucky's a look-ahead spot. I think they take care of business today because Kentucky's not going to be able to keep pace with the Vols.
All right, so let me ask you this much. Because my whole contention has been that Tennessee is going to get got at some point with their pass defense, right? There's going to be a game where their offense just isn't as sharp. They don't convert on as many third downs. They have to settle for a field goal instead of scoring a touchdown, and the pass defense is going to allow a team to stay in a game much longer than it should. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, you're not wrong. That's what the Alabama game was, right? Bryce Young threw for 455 yards. That's what it is. This is a team that I think they're really, if we want to just to put it at a very base level, I think there are 2 types of teams in college football. There are teams that want to score 40 points and teams that want to stop scoring 20 points. Tennessee is a team that wants to score 40 points. Alabama is a team that can score 40 but wants to hold you to 20. Georgia's a team that can score 40, but wants to hold you to 20. And Tennessee is like, hey, if we got to score 50 points to win, let's score 50 points. That's what it's going to take. And I think there's a level of faith, a measure of faith in that. I think the most interesting for me is Ohio State, who has gone from a team that wants to score 40 to a team that not only wants to score 40, but also wants to hold you to 20. They have the most interesting dynamic in college football. Nobody else has that same sort of dynamic where they want to score and also will stop you.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I feel like it's the top 3 teams in Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama, and then everybody else. Who do you think in the next 3-4 weeks ends up making it into the college football playoffs alongside what is probably going to be Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama at this point?
I think Tennessee belongs in the discussion. I think Tennessee, honestly, they might be in a real prime position because obviously we have an undefeated TCU. We'll see if they run the table, they're in. I understand that. And everybody in the Pac-12's got 1 loss. So that's rough for them. But Tennessee, let's think about this. Let's say TCU drops a game somewhere along the way. In Tennessee, they do end up losing that 1 game to Georgia. Guess what? They're 11-1. They're just kind of hanging out. All they need is for Georgia to take care of Alabama. An Alabama team, by the way, that they have already beaten. So it could end up, it could be a nightmare. It could be the nightmare scenario, the scenario that nobody on the playoff committee wants is for Tennessee to lose to Georgia, Alabama to beat Georgia, and now we've got 3 one-loss sitting there like, yeah, but we all beat each other. So why shouldn't all 3 of us be in and we just leave the other guys out? So it's very interesting. I think that Tennessee is in a great spot. If they win out, they're in. If they lose the game, they still have an opportunity to get in because of that huge win that they had. So they've got the best one of the season. I expect, what are the rankings called? Tuesday? I expect Tennessee to be number 1. And that's going to be interesting to see if they can hold on to it. But I think TCU is within striking distance. I think it's going to be interesting to see TCU, Oklahoma State, how they finish things out, because both of those teams still feel like they're in striking distance of getting there. Listen, and I've said this before on the show. I've said it many times. Utah's got to be kicking themselves because losing to Florida absolutely took them out of the picture, and they're a team that probably belongs a lot closer to that than people realize. And I think Oregon is an interesting one. That loss to Georgia hurts a lot. But if Georgia wins the SEC, well, that's what I was going to say. This is not –
if they run the table, they're in. If they're only losses to Georgia, they are in.
That's the part – that's what I was getting to, is the idea that they're not the same team that played Georgia. They are they've revamped, they've dialed in. That was their head coach's first game as a head coach. They're a new team. They're dialed in against his former team with a quarterback that was a transfer who had never played a game in Oregon. That's one of those things where they are completely different than they were before. They took care of business against UCLA. That was the heck of a football game that they played there. So yeah, I think that if we talk striking distance and we're looking at who's going to be that 14 to slide in, if we're going to go ahead and write in Bama, Georgia, and Ohio State, I think obviously there's a Michigan team that's with Michigan. Can you imagine if the decision that you have to make, if Michigan's loss is a tight loss to Ohio State wins out, and then we've got that Bama, Georgia, Tennessee scenario, like, okay, I guess we've got to make a choice. We've got to make a decision, and that's going to be one of the roughest ones for the College Football Playoff Committee.
And there's a couple of things that you're leaving out. One, an undefeated Clemson conference champion still.
Oh my God.
And I believe honestly, we let a non-Power 5 team in last year. This will be the first year they leave out an undefeated conference champion in Clemson because the schedule just doesn't warrant it given everything else that's out there. And I'll add one more. If Oregon runs the table, they're in. And I will say if USC runs the table, they are in. I don't think they're going to leave USC out. Given a 1-point loss to a Utah team that, as you said, probably should have been in this conversation if they don't dump a game to Florida early in the year. So those 2 Pac-12 teams, I think, control their own destiny, and I'm with you. My bias against Tennessee is just based off of they're going to get smoked by a college football playoff team. They're going to get beaten resoundingly because that pass defense is going to put them in a spot where against a legitimate defense like Ohio State or Michigan, or a rematch against Bama, whatever it may be, they're going to end up on the wrong side of this. It's just too much for me to swallow. So I don't know that a one-loss Tennessee team that doesn't get to the conference championship
either they're
gets
going to end up on the wrong side of this, Either they're going to end up on the wrong side of this, or you're going to end up on the wrong side of this. I am all in on Tennessee at this point. And Michael, I told Zinno this. I have a futures bet on Hendon Hooker 60-1 to win the Heisman. I am all in on Tennessee right now, make it all the way. But this is part of the reason probably why they need to expand the college football playoff, because we are having these discussions, right?
No, listen, this is a 1 year insane situation. This is not an every year insane situation. Right. This is a 1 year crazy situation where, and let's be real, here's the reality. Where the quarterbacks go, college football goes. This is 1 year where we have, let's be real. Bo Nix is playing his tail off, right? Yeah. You've got Caleb Williams. You've got Max Duggan, who finally percolated to the surface at TCU, who's playing really good football. You throw in C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, who are givens already. We know those guys are going to go 1-2 in the draft in some order. 1-3, 1-2 in the draft in some order, depending on who has those first picks. You have Hendon Hooker, was pretty good to end last year and is playing lights out football now. And then we're going to have to figure out what's going to happen at Clemson with DJ, who was playing well up until that Syracuse game. By the way, credit to Syracuse, really good defensive performance. And then they got to figure out what they're going to do with him and Kate Klubnik. But we don't usually have this many good Cam Rising at Utah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson at UCLA, Will Levis at Kentucky. We have 9. There are 9 guys that are going to be in contention with the idea that maybe they can be first round picks. I think we'll probably see 6 go in the first round. And we're going to see teams trade back up into the first round to get some of these guys. These guys are good. This does not happen every year. Most years, and you know this, both of you know this, the quarterback position is booty in college football. It's bad. And now we're seeing these guys, we're seeing a bunch of guys put it together all at the same time. And that's the part where, and I guess we have to take Caleb Williams out because he's still a true sophomore. He can't go to the draft. But we're seeing all these guys with an opportunity to go, guys that have a chance to play, and they are good. They're really good. So if we see 5 quarterbacks get picked in the first round, that's the reason for this. It's not that we need to expand the playoff. It's just we should be thanking the college football gods because for once, there's a lot of good quarterbacks, not just 2.
I love you.
Yeah.
I love what you just said.
We all love you, Michael Felder. Thank you so much for coming on in the show. Love the insight. We'll be talking to you, I'm sure, throughout the next few weeks in college football playoffs, bowl games, all that jazz. Have a great weekend. Best of luck with your week 9 bets.
Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll. We're getting ready to get to work on a Saturday. You guys take it easy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks so much for coming on. You can find him at In the Bleachers, college football analyst Michael Felder. We love it. All right, let's get into Superbook.com. You got to make sure to check it out because Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com or download the app today. This season, Zinno, we are rooting for safeties. That is because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Superbook.com to Pickswise.com. Zinno, and I know you have a few 3-star play of the days. Why don't you hit us with what the people need to see on Pickswise.com?
There are a bunch of great college football 3-star plays out there today. A couple of them I actually agree with, including Illinois -7.5 from Stephen Hall. That's one of the games that I'll back today, and Arkansas -3.5 from Sam Avalone as well. So go to Pickswise.com. Check that all out. And real quick, Lauren, I know Michael Felder, and he was fantastic, brought up all crazy scenarios. Remember, there's still this week and 4 weeks after this. More often than not, a lot of this stuff works itself out, right? A lot of this stuff ends up, all these undefeateds that we see and everything, somebody takes a loss here and there, and it absolutely ends up working. I will say this much. I don't know if the committee puts Tennessee #1 and Georgia #2, boy, is Georgia going to be insane. We all want 1-2 next week. I think no matter what, it's Georgia 1, Tennessee 2. As long as Tennessee doesn't lose this week, Georgia's 1 and Tennessee is 2. Why? Because we set up a 1-2 matchup in the regular season that the whole world is going to be watching. But if they disrespect Georgia and put Tennessee number 1 over Georgia, man, is that going to make this fan base irate. Wow.
Next week is going to be crazy. Yeah, next
Stanford's
week's going to be wild if that happens.
Here in Athens, Georgia next week.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of here for it. I'm not going to lie. Like, that, to me, makes me even want to take Georgia even more next week. You know, as much as I've been poo-pooing Tennessee for the last 30 minutes, that would make me want to take Georgia even more next week if they make them number 2. So now that he put that seed in my head, I'm kind of hoping – part of me is almost like, hey, if Tennessee blows out Kentucky and I don't cover this number today, you know, like, that's it. Like, if they're not going to cover, I want them to win by 35 and Georgia to only win by a field goal this week, right? So they end up flipping them, and then I can lay it with Georgia the following week. You see how I'm thinking? I'm just trying to get ahead.
I see. I like he's building up the drama. He loves the drama. I'm excited for it, though. That's going to be a big game. Both teams need to take care of business this weekend, which I think they both will, but we'll see. It all starts today. Let's get into your best bet of the day. I know both of us are laying big numbers for our play of the day and spread.
Coming out big, LJ. Let's get some big flex going on. Here we go. Out to the Pac-12, and our producer Kyle says, I feel like every week your play of the day is in the Pac-12, and well, I've probably, exceeded expectations for betting in the Pac-12 this year. But let's just continue the run while we're at it, because UCLA took their first loss last week at the hands of Oregon, who, oh, by the way, is really, really good. Oh, sorry, Jacob. It's not Kyle. Jacob's producing today. I apologize. But UCLA takes their first loss last week at Oregon. I think it's a great bounce-back spot coming home against a very weak opponent in the Stanford Cardinals. Stanford squeaked out their first conference win last week, 15-14, a real snoozer of Arizona State. The Cardinal offense at the bottom of the Pac-12 in points and yards, and their defense in the same situation in conference play, second to last in points allowed, third to last in yards allowed, and second to last in rushing yards allowed, which means UCLA running back Zach Charbonnet should have a huge day. He's averaging over 7 yards per carry. Pair that with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback for the Bruins, who's completing 75% of his passes and leading an offense that converts on nearly 57% of their third downs this year. Now, I know Stanford, top 20 in America, actually, in opponent third down conversion percentage. That'll be a key stat to watch. But for all the bluster about how the Coliseum and nobody goes to see UCLA home games, the Bruins have still averaged over 40 points a game at home in conference play. They're still undefeated at home. They should roll and bounce back against a very bad Stanford Cardinal team today. I'll lay the 16.5 with UCLA.
I like it. I'm laying just under that, 14.5 points with, I hate to say this, Ohio State. And I hate rooting for Ohio State, but I like making money. This is the game of the week, in my opinion, to be honest. Number 2, taking on number 13. Penn State hasn't won this matchup since 2016, and I don't think that they're going to win this matchup this year. They just don't have the balance on their team to outscore a team like OSU. They're too one-dimensional for me. And their defense definitely won't keep them in this game. The only real test their defense had, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, Zeno, is against Michigan, where they allowed 41 points and 418 rushing yards. Yikes. And they're now going up against Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. And then you add in the pass game with C.J. Stroud and all those other guys. OSU is statistically dominant against every single team they play against this season. C.J. Stroud is completing 70% of his passes. He has 28 touchdowns on the season with only 4 interceptions. And the Buckeyes are 36 for 36 in the red zone this season. 86% of those are touchdowns. I know Penn State, one of their strengths is being able to shut teams down in the red zone. That's not going to happen against Ohio State. If this game was a whiteout at night, I think this game would be closer. It's not. It's going to be an Ohio State blowout because Penn State's offense is too one-dimensional, and Penn State's defense will not be able to keep them in this game against an offense like Ohio State. So I'm laying the 14.5. Lock it in. Let's make it happen, baby. That's it for us today. Find us at the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Mark Zeno, Lauren Jabara, Week 9, college football. It's all presented by Superbook Sports. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let's get it. Let's bet it.